going deeper into the DSL, domain-specific language of Puppet. So in this section we will cover Puppet resource metaparameters, we will learn how to bring order into our manifests, and we cover the notification of services. Understanding metaparameters. In this video we are going to take a look at what metaparameters are and how they are useful. Prerequisites for this video. Video 1. Installing Puppet. So VM1 should be running and you should be connected with SSH. So what actually are metaparameters? A metaparameter works with any resource type, including custom types and defined types. But the difference between metaparameters and normal parameters or attributes is they affect how Puppet behaves and not the state of the resource. So what are examples of important metaparameters? For example, resource ordering, metaparameters for ordering resources. For example, there's before. This specifies one or more resources that depend on this resource that uses the metaparameter before. It accepts a single resource or an array. Then there's require. It specifies or more resources this resource depends on. It also accepts a single resource or an array. Then there's subscribe. It specifies resources this resource depends on, but it also refreshes, for example restarts if it's a service resource, the resource using subscribe. So for example with subscribe you can restart a service when you change the configuration file with Puppet. Then there's notify. It specifies resources that depend on this resource, and it also refreshes dependent resources. So with before and require, subscribe and notify, you can specify order between resources. And you can use both directions for ordering resources. Finally, the schedule. It specifies a time frame when Puppet is allowed to manage this resource. So let's look at an example now. I'm here connected to VM1. So I'm going to open my root shell with sudo -i. And I'm going to create a new manifest called service. Or not service, let's call it schedule.pp. So I'm using the VI editor and I'm creating a new manifest schedule.pp, where we demonstrate the usage of the schedule metaparameter. So the first step, I have to use the schedule resource type to define a schedule. So here I'm using the schedule resource type. I'm gonna call this schedule everyday. And I'm going to set the period to daily. So this should be scheduled once a day. And the range when this should run should be between 4 and 8 o'clock. And I'm also going to set repeat to 1. So Puppet is only applying the resources one time. Be aware that you have to spec a rather wide range for using a schedule, because obviously this only works when Puppet runs. Normally you're scheduling a Puppet run, for example, for every 30 minutes. So it makes no sense to specify a schedule that is smaller than 30 minutes. If you want to schedule jobs or resources on an exact time, I would recommend using a cron job. So then we are going to use a file resource. I'm going to use /tmp a file as a test file for this file resource. We're going to set ensure to file, so we make sure it's a normal file. And we're going to set the schedule parameter to every day. When we specify the schedule for the file resource to every day, Puppet should manage this resource only between 4 and 8, and between this time it should only apply the resource one time. So let's try out what this actually means. I'm going to save and quit the file. And let's check the local time on this system. It's now 6 p.m. and looking at schedule.pp, Puppet should now create the file. Let's see if there's a file in the temp directory. No, it's not there. So we've defined a range between 4 and 8. It's now 6 o'clock and repeat is set to 1 time, to 1. So Puppet should actually create the file now on a Puppet run. So I'm going to use Puppet apply schedule.pp. And you can see Puppet created the file resource. When you run Puppet again, nothing is going to happen because the file resource is already there with the requested attributes. But if I'm now removing the file, yes, I'm sure I want to remove the file, the test file. When I now run Puppet again, it will not recreate the file because we defined a schedule and we have also set repeat to 1. So between 4 and 8, we just want to manage the resource one time. So I'm going to run Puppet apply again and I'm specifying our schedule.pp manifest. And as you can see, the temp tmp file was not there and Puppet did also not recreate the file because of our schedule. So this was an example of the schedule metaparameter. We are going into more details of before and require in one of the next videos. And we're also going to discuss subscribe and notify also in one of the following videos. If you would like to learn more about metaparameters, there's the metaparameter reference. So let's click on the link. As you can see, there are more metaparameters available than before, require, schedule and so on. But in my opinion, most of the time you're only going to use before, then notify, require, and maybe you're going to use schedule. But if you want to learn more about the different metaparameters, please go ahead and read the documentation.